Welcome everyone to another indie showcase here on the channel, highlighting the main developers submitted games and demos we play. If you'd like to submit a game for a future piece, please reach out. We are starting this episode off with Trinity Archetype. This is a deck building or kind of a RPG-esque roguelike, where our key element here is that you always have a party of 3, hence the Trinity. But there's a greater emphasis on boosting and powering characters up compared to some of the other roguelikes and roguelites that we've played. So how this works is that characters will gain abilities as they level up. You'll be able to choose between them. And each skill has a different action point cost. Action points are pooled between the 3 characters. However, once per turn you can inspire one of your characters. Each character, when inspired, will gain a different effect, and you can also use boost points in order to further modify skills, making them do more of what they can do, maybe adding new impact, that kind of thing. So there's definitely a lot more decision making and tactical choices per turn compared to some of the other RPG, roguelikes, and deck builders that we've played. Now the footage you're seeing is taken from the demo. This is from a while ago, so the game is still not out yet, but the demo is still available, and what you see may not represent the current or future version of it. But of all the kind of like roguelike-ish style games that we've played, I like kind of the level of fidelity of how you can manipulate what's going on per turn. If you're not a fan of this kind of style of game, Trinity Archetype seems like it's aimed at more of a moderate or advanced level with all the different inspire and boosted abilities. But if you do enjoy these kinds of games, I would definitely at least check out the demo and see if it scratches that itch for you. We now turn to something very different with Green with Energy. This is a kind of puzzle edutainment style game that we played the demo for a long time ago. It reminds me a lot of a educational game I used to play in elementary school on my computer like 800 years ago at this point, that involved having to learn how electricity works, transferring power to and fro, and making sure not to overload things. For this game, your mission is to build energy-conscious environments and neighborhoods to get off of fossil fuels and all that. So, kind of similar to, say, a Zachtronics game or some of the more like economical puzzle games. You're graded on how much money you spend as well as how efficient your setup is. Different kinds of power will have different rules to them. Solar energy, of course, only works during the day, so you'll have to connect things to a battery in order to maintain power at night. As the game goes on, they'll be introducing additional forms of power, different biomes and climates to mess with you, and that kind of thing. From the demo that we play, this is definitely more on the challenging side. Again, they're trying to kind of teach about energy conservation and setting up these grids rather than being a Dark Souls-like of electricity. The store page does hint at having real-world lessons and understanding for teachers and people interested in learning more about clean energy. So this is one of those games that definitely falls on the niche side of things. Something tells me from my audience watching this, you guys probably aren't interested in a solar panel setup and lowering your energy bill. Although you might just be, I don't know. But if you're looking for more of an educational style puzzle game, I would say check this one out. We now go to something that is probably not as edutainment minded, and that is Super Grave Snatchers. This belongs to the very popular indie category of be the bad guy and raise an undead army, which surprisingly there is a lot of games in this respective genre. So our story is that you have risen from your grave to take vengeance on the kingdom, and you have sold your soul to become a necromancer. So what are you going to do? You're going to raise an undead army and lay waste to the villages and people who have wronged you. The basic gameplay involves very similar to something like what was it, Overlord, which was one of my favorites back in the day, or even like a Pikmin style game, where you will raise your minions from the corpses of your enemies. You'll gain different spells and be able to upgrade them as you go forward. When you send your army out, they're going to basically do their own thing. And you'll be able to upgrade kind of as a pseudo roguelite, or more of like an RPG progression every time you die. You'll be able to use your skull or your souls up there in order to do that. Now, the game itself is definitely one of those what you see is what you get kind of affairs. If you did not enjoy the first level or the first few minutes of this game, it's not going to evolve or change. And that was kind of one of my big complaints when I played this one, that it kind of felt a little bit on the monotonous side. I kind of lost interest after about like 30 minutes or so of play. But for what's here, if the general gameplay loop interests you and you want to do your own Night of the Living Dead or Evil Dead kind of affair, then I would check this one out because it is a very solid design. With that said, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have 3 more games for our showcase this week. And if you're interested in my thoughts on design, then check out my game design books. For entry-level students, we have 20 essential games to study, and then the Game Design Deep Dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with free-to-play coming in 2022. We now turn to the Lightbringer. This is a 3D action adventure, kind of more focused on puzzle and exploration, rather than full-on combat. You play as a boy here who is trying to, well, as the title inclines, to bring light back to the world. And he's going to do that by collecting MacGuffins, solving puzzles, fighting slime monsters, and of course trying not to get killed. So, the loop of this one is that each level is kind of a self-contained island, filled with puzzles, obstacles, little kind of dungeon areas, etc. Your mission is to get to the end of the level, collect as many MacGuffins as you can, and bring, well, light back. Now, the puzzle design is of your kind of basic 3D action adventure variety. You'll be operating switches, moving things around, and of course getting into fights when the time comes. One noticeable issue that I had with this game is that the camera is entirely operated by the player, and there were a lot of cases where it would just not show me a good angle, and no matter how many times I try to manipulate it, which can make it very hard to gauge perception when it comes to jumping or fighting enemies. Combat can be annoying. There is no lock-on. So you have to kind of hold the button down and throw the boomerang you have to hit enemies. But when they're coming at you from multiple angles, it's very easy not to be able to just like hit an enemy who is directly in front of you. Now, at the time when we played this game at launch, there was one major issue with it. And that is, if you run out of health in a level, you restart the entire level from scratch, and that includes all the puzzles that you've solved from that point before. So this is definitely a very weird punishment for a game like this that seems like it's aimed more for like a casual core audience, rather than kind of like hardcore difficulty. And that is a weird kind of difficulty spike for a game like this, and it also hurts it in terms of approachability. If you don't mind that, and I don't know if they have improved it since the launch, I would say check this one out if you are a fan of action-adventure games looking for a new one, but I don't think this game does anything new or unique to maybe bring in someone who's not already a fan. We now have Happenlance. This is a kind of rage game platformer where, instead of using a pogo stick or a hammer or any other rage-inducing device, we use a lance. Your mission is to be the brave knight who must explore the kingdom and use their lance to do everything except for fighting monsters. So you'll be pogoing, vaulting, using physics, and all that great stuff. Now, as far as the physics go, this is a game very similar to that of Getting Over It, in that you'll have to do quick pushes and quick motions of your mouse in order to fling, launch propel, vault, and all that stuff around. The problem for me with games like this is that it's very hard on your hands. And I would say if you're someone who doesn't like rage games, if getting over just did not work for you, this is not the game for you. But if you are looking for another kind of rage style game, I would say at least give this one a check and see if you can vault and lance over it. And for the final game of our showcase this week, this is the demo of Timemelters. Now, what you're seeing may not represent the current version of the game, and there is currently a free prologue that is just map challenges. So, our concept here is that we are a witch with the power to bend time, and we're going to need to fight and save the world from evil using time manipulation and, of course, throwing lots and lots of magic blasts at enemies. The hook here is that each map is kind of set up as like a tower defense or a MOBA in terms of the different lanes. And you're able to set up spells, traps, manipulate certain things in the environment like trees. But you also can rewind time. And every time your character is killed or gets overwhelmed, you will rewind back to the start. However, all the actions that you did on the previous loop will remain. So the idea is that you, and you are going to fight the different waves of enemies, each at different time periods of the fight, using different spells on each kind of loop or version of it. It's a kind of nifty twist, I would say, on the formula. The game is definitely on the challenging side. You have to set up spells and area effects while they are running right at you, and your character does not have a lot of defense, as you can see right there. The time manipulation and kind of the different timelines, I think, is definitely the game's major selling point, as well as the challenge. The developers have said that this is meant to be a hard game to play. From when we play the demo, I'm intrigued by it, but I'm still a little bit leery in terms of how hard it's going to be to actually make use of everything and do all the different manipulations, even with the option to have time rewinding and being able to have the different timelines. So, with that said, I would at least check out the prologue and see what you can make of it, and I'm curious again to play the full game when it's due out, I believe, later this year. So, that is going to do it for the Indie Showcase. As always, do the liking, subscribing, and commenting. Again, if you are working on a game and want me to take a look at for a future piece, please reach out and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where some of the art and science of games.